I want to nerd out for just a second. So you went to negative, and then you did an IP, and then you bleach bypassed at which phase?
Yeah, so the film was shot on the Alexa LF, and in a lot of the testings that we did with Greg, we had these lenses that were a little bit crazy and detuned.
Broken.
Even some more broken. Broken is...
They were the rejects.
Yes, they were
the ones that we were urged not to use, and that meant they were probably really good.
Yes, and some of them were detuned a little bit more.
Detuned.
But part of the discussion that we had was we always wanted to go to IP. So when you go through that process, you could say a traditional film process, you have your negative, you make an IP, so they get stuck together and printed. Then that IP makes another negative to then what you can make prints of.
Right.
In the best form is you have your original negative and you make a print. So that's how traditionally we would do answer prints to sign off all.
You could show prints from the original negative.
And things like that.
Looks beautiful, right?
So on this film, it was shot on digital with these detuned lenses. So Greg always knew that, okay, we're going to lose some resolution because every time it goes through that process, we have it. So he chose lenses for that situation. And then when we got to the final process, we would choose the shot as well based on the resolution. So what we did is we graded the entire film digitally. And when we were when I was doing the initial pass, it was all done pure digital and clean. Then when Matt and Greg were in the room and we were being really creative, I put an emulation layer on there to say it's going to look something like this once we've gone through the photochemical process.
And that was just a series of calculations that you had made to kind of emulate.
From a lot of tests, I get the same footage that's gone through it and not gone through it. And the wonderful thing of working at Photochem is we are a lab. So we can just pump out film and bring it in and scan it in. So there was a lot of direct comparison. So it's not just putting a bit of grain on there. You know, there's weave, there's shears happening to it because it's optical, so it kind of bends the image. There's dark shade areas, there's flicker independently in the different channels, there's grain, there's halation, you know, there's defocus, there's blur, there's a lot of elements that would go in there. But knowing it was only for emulation, but it was so we all got the vibe. So again, if we were feeling, something might be a bit soft, maybe we can sharpen it up before we go to film and things like that. So what we ended up doing, we finished the film digitally, viewing it like that. Then we turned that off so that we put a nice clean signal to the negative. We shot it to negative, and then we skip bleached that negative.
You skip bleached the negative and then went to IP.
And then we went to IP. We did lots of tests. We skip bleached IP. We just skip bleached
so
neg.
We
did lots of different ways of working this out
to figure this out. But so for folks who are listening and who don't know what bleach bypass or skip printing.
Okay, so normally when you have a negative film, it goes through a processor, and that processor has various baths that set the image, fix the image, and one of those baths is the bleach, and it removes excess silver from the film.
Right.
So when you skip bleach, you're leaving the silver on the film. So the way it reacts with color and the way it reacts with highlights and halation and density is what that skip bleach look is. So 7 is a very obvious example of something that's gone through that process. So we skip bleach the neg. You can skip bleach IP, you can skip bleach print neg. So we did many, many tests of like 70, 80, 100 different ways of doing things.
Amazing.
And then working out how to pull it all back. But we found out from these early discussions that we liked an element of traditional skip bleach, but we didn't like all of this other stuff. So we wanted the lower contrast, and skip bleach is just not lower con. We wanted to be able to have these saturated colors when they hit, again, not part of a traditional skip bleach. So by doing this special system of putting the digital onto negative, we allow the photochemical to do the skip bleaching, but then we can restore all this stuff back digitally afterwards. So it was really wonderful. And then because that neg is skip bleached, the IP is receiving that same halation factor and all of the good stuff we like from the neg. And then we bring it all back in. Our color science does his crazy propeller head stuff to actually make it usable image for me that works in exactly the same way of how I've been working. It's just gone through this wonderful photochemical random process. And then we match it again. So the scientific way gets me back 90% of the way there. And then we visually go through and even it out, because when you look at it, especially with IP, the colors change a lot within a shot. When we look at the digital version of this, it's pure. It is pristine. It is graded within an inch of its life. However, when it's gone through this process, and especially on IP, you look at one shot as like red, pink, green, something, all within one shot. Like it's just changing color because of just...
That's chemicals.
It's chemicals. It's the emulsion. It's everything. And that was part of the beauty of what we love with this process. It was this complete and utter randomness. And we were all like I said to Matt early on, is like, it's going to be close, but it's not going to be exactly
we didn't know what it was going to look
do.
like.
No,
right? Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And so I said, as long as we're all like open to the fact of it's going to do its thing. I mean, it is very close. I mean, it's not like it's a different
It wasn't
movie.
radical, but it's still
But it's
doing stuff.
But it does stuff, and that's why we chose to do it. Otherwise, we could have just emulated it.
Sure.
But it's that it's
There's the organic.
It's the organic. It's just doing things that we wouldn't have thought about. So then we would bring it back in, and then we would match grade it to look like it, and then we'd do our final pass. So then we'd sit down and watch the movie, and we go, and we'd just continue on with the creative. But now that was our source.
Yeah. Well, and you also had it to use as an element or not used, depending on
used.
the particular shot and the particular needs of that's really interesting.
And so we would
There's
go.
probably, what, 1 or 2 digital shots in the whole movie? 2, right?
I would say there's three, but 2 are effectively a shared shot.
Yeah.
And one of those was chosen because of a resolution. We just wanted to
Wasn't
really
sharp enough, yeah.
hit home a story point.
Yeah.
And the other one was just, it was a weird light in the background, and we just said, and the thing is, I then just emulated it directly because I had an exact thing that I was matching to. So there is no way people could possibly know which one is not, because it's for a shot. If it was over the course of the movie, then there will be telltale signs of like, no, you're emulating or not. But when it was just a shot here or there, you can't tell. But then that's what we did as the final pass, is we all sat down, we did a technical kind of decision, like, what is the nicer version of the shot in terms of sharps, or if there just happened to be weird things happening on the film. And we sat down, and then we'd go, let's go back and have a look there. And then we'd just choose. Maybe it wasn't as nice as I said before, but we'd choose it. Or maybe that can be a little bit cleaner, because Matt would say, no, it's really important that we see this on one of the monitors.
Some detail. Maybe we need to read something.
We need like it's not needed for the story, but that depth of is needed, just to help.
Because we introduced so much defocus just before we ever got just onto what we shot onto the LF, right? So there's, we shot with an image intensifier as well, and what that did, and then the color of that, because we didn't, I wanted, when we were testing the image intensifier, we were trying to figure out if these contact lenses are night vision, then we should try using real night vision. So we shot with real night vision, but we wanted them to be Batman's night vision, so they shouldn't be that sort of telltale green, right, that you see when you're seeing like that kind of footage. So we're taking that, and then Dave is taking that and pushing that kind of into a sort of a pinker reddish kind of tone, so it feels more signature Batman. And then that thing is responding to light and to it's not a precise instrument. I mean, it's on this long tube. It's the image intensifier. So like, not only we have crazy lenses, we have crazy systems, and then on top of that, to do film on top of that. And so there are all different kinds of reasons why we would tweak between whether or not it should be negative, whether or not it should be IP. I mean, it was a very it was an exciting process.
It sounds like it was a lot of experimentation and a lot of time that you took to kind of dial.
I mean, even just with the image intensifier, getting that color was, I would have to say, and I don't know about you, Matt, it is the most footage I've ever dealt with from testing of any film that I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Hours and hours and hours of footage.
For sure, yeah.
Like in locations like in London and Scotland and Chicago.
Yeah.
And then these cameras, and then how projection systems work, because there's the scene in the old orphanage with projecting. So like,
oh yeah.
Right.
Oh,
it
honestly, it was crazy. We also shot like the Riddler. Greg and I mean, we're idiots, but like it was this kind of thing where he's filming on his phone, right? So we're going like, well, he could just film, on an iPhone, but they're pretty clear. So then, of course, we get a whole range of these kind of counterfeit phones. And this one counterfeit phone, I mean, honestly, it was a nightmare that we shot because we started having sync issues. Like, it's one of these things, you're looking for the right texture, and it just feels like, well, that's kind of really signature, right? That look is very unsettling. It was a terrible image. But so we shot, I mean, the number of different ways in which this film was shot. I mean, you watch the movie and you think you're seeing like the movie, but when it comes down to between the lenses that were used and then the way that night vision was used, the fact that we were doing stuff that we shot that was meant to have been shot 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it was before you were shooting in HD. So we shot on standard def and then projected that on the wall. And then all of that was supposed to align in such a way that you realized that he was standing in the same place where that footage was shot 20 years ago when he was a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, there were so many layers to the visual exploration in this. Yeah, the testing that we did was crazy.
But it really, I mean, it is a very expensive, experimentation film. I mean, like we did a lot. And then that whole film thing that we did helps tie everything together. So it is just...
It's the last level of... There's all of a piece. Yeah.